Hello, in this video we will discuss about the creatine phosphate system. So first of all we will understand about the synthesis in the liver during the urea cycle, and next we will also understand about the function of the creatine phosphate. So the methionine, glycine and arginine, these three type of amino acids used for it. So in this way, in the liver, first of all we will discuss in the liver. So in the liver during the urea cycle, L-arginine will convert into the ornithine, but during the AGAT, so the arginine glycine aminotransferase AGAT, which that is the enzyme, will convert into the glycine into the guanidinoacetate, and this guanidinoacetate, due to the release of the water and urea also release during the L-arginine to ornithine formation. So in this way the urea will be produced, so the urea cycle will be occur. And in this way the glycine will convert due to the arginine glycine aminotransferase enzyme. Arginine combine with glycine to produce the guanidinoacetate, and this guanidinoacetate, in the presence of enzyme guanidinoacetate adenosyl homomethionine transferase enzyme, this used for to convert the S-adenosyl homomethionine to convert the S-adenosyl homocysteine, and in this way the homocysteine will be produced from the homomethionine, from the adenosyl S-adenosyl homomethionine to the S-adenosyl homocysteine, and in this way the creatine will be produced, and this creatine structure we will discuss also. And the GAMT is the special enzyme which that is convert the guanidinoacetate into the creatine, and this creatine is basically go into the blood, and if the excess of the creatine will convert into the renal excretion, which that is the creatinine will be produced and excrete from the urinary system if the excess amount of the creatine will be produced. So in this case, for example, the creatine, which that is basically important for the holding the phosphate group as a energy. So what that means we will discuss. So here is we will discuss about the reaction with the ATP. So the creatine, is the structural formula is here, you can see, and this is the creatine, and this creatine will convert into the creatinine. So the creatinine is the different type of the which that is here, you can see the red color is showing that the creatinine, and it can be converted in from the creatine to creatinine. But here the creatine will hold the one phosphate group in the amine with the amine, so the release of the ADP and proton. So the creatinine is a different formula, you can see. So next here is we will discuss about their function. So what is the function of the creatine? So the creatinine was the ring-like structure, but the creatinine is the chain. So the autonomic nervous system is basically the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system composed with the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic used for the fight and flight response, while the parasympathetic nervous system during the rest and digestion. So it is the involuntary. So that during exercise the catabolism will be occur, and during the catabolism it means the fight and flight response will be occur, and increase the sympathetic nervous system will lead to more consumption of oxygen, consumption of ATP more, and the alert more. So in this way the energy consumption will be more, and in this way the catabolism will be occur due to the fight and flight response. So the cortisol hormone and glucocorticoid will be produced, and in this way the fight and flight response will trigger the adrenal gland. And here is the tissue which that is the anaerobic respiration will be occur. Why? Because the less amount of oxygen will be inhaled, and in this way the anaerobic respiration is the glycolysis will be occur just. So the lack of ATP will be, so the deficiency of the ATP due to the less amount of the oxygen. So the oxidative phosphorylation will be not occur. So here is the adrenal gland will produce the epinephrine, and this epinephrine and cortisol hormone and glucocorticoid, which that is, for example, the epinephrine bind with the myocytes or liver cells. When bind with the myocyte or liver cells, and the glycogenolysis will be occur, and if it bind with the adipose tissue, so the lipolysis will be occur, and the gluconeogenesis will be occur. So in this way, during the exercise, there are many metabolic activity with a long-term exercise will lead to increase the breakdown of the glycogen to is known as the glycogenolysis, while the lipolysis also occur. And in this way, the increase of the glucose and free fatty acid into the blood. So in this way, the hyperglycemia and hyperlipidemia will be occur due to the high exercise, but it's normal, and after several hours um, can be minimized and homeostat. So the hyperglycemia will lead to entry of the glucose into the different region, for example, brain as well as muscle. So here I am drawing the muscle cell. This is the muscle cell for understanding the creatine phosphate system. So let's begin to understand the creatine phosphate system. So here is a cell and contain a mitochondria. The mitochondria is important for the powerhouse of the energy to produce ATP through oxygen, because the Krebs cycle requires the oxygen. So that is why oxygen require the oxygen from the Krebs cycle to produce FADH2 and NADH, which that produce the ATP. So the ATP will be ATP produced due to the oxygen is known as aerobic respiration. While here is the oxidative phosphorylation will produce the during the glycolysis, so produce the pyruvate. This is the anaerobic respiration, while the Krebs cycle is the aerobic respiration, and the pyruvate will be enter into the mitochondria if the oxygen amount will be more favorable, while here is the oxygen will use to convert ADP into the ATP during the electron transport chain, and here is the mitochondria creatine kinase enzyme, which that is ATP donate to the creatine to hold this phosphate group with the creatine, and in this way the creatine phosphate formation. So this is the extra stored energy. It is the cytosolic. Why? Because the will not produce more, so the rapid and quick production of the ATP is difficult from the mitochondrial glycolysis due to the stress time, and the glycolysis will not produce more ATP. So the phosphate group is high energy group will be stored in the form of creatine phosphate. So here is the glycolysis will produce the ATP also, with the creatine kinase cytosolic will provide the creatine to the creatine phosphate. So here is the ATP will be produced from the creatine kinase, and this creatine kinase enzyme use the ATP to produce the creatine phosphate with the using of the creatine. So the creatine phosphate is the extra stored energy. It is the cytosolic, which that is the more in athlete, but the normal person will less amount of creatine stored phosphate group. So here is the ATP is the cytosolic ATP consumption will be more. So in this way the creatine will transport the phosphate group to the ADP to the convert into the ATP, and in this way ATP will be used for several mechanisms, for several function in our body, for example high intensity workout. So that means creatine is very important for the holding of the phosphate group and quick response for the ATP providing. So the ATP will be a quick formation of ATP due to the creatine. So the creatine phosphate. So the creatine supplement will increase the creatine, will lead to increase the stamina and increase the metabolic activity and lead to decrease the stress. So here is the oxygen will decrease the deficiency of the oxygen, and fight and flight response will be inhibit the oxidative phosphorylation, and in this way the ATP in the mitochondria will not produce due to the less amount of the oxygen, while the carbon dioxide will more. And in this way, when oxygen will not produce from the mitochondria, so the creatine will work. So thanks for watching.